The Last Dream, Abel Betancourt. Chapter 8. The President.
That afternoon, I was sitting on the White House rostrum, surrounded by important government figures, journalists, and celebrities. They took a lot of pictures of me when I arrived. They asked me a lot of questions, both journalists and officials, and employees of the White House. I did not see Mr. Thompson until after the speech. The security guards accompanied me and guided me all the way to my place in the stands. We had to wait a long time. Luckily, the breeze was pleasant. In front of the tribune, a huge audience gathered. The spectacle was majestic. Thousands of people were there, waiting for the president. Finally, after a bit of fanfare and the vice president's words, the president arrived. He walked straight to the podium, waving everywhere. While he advanced, he shook hands with some guests from the tribune. Next to him was his wife, the First Lady. The audience became euphoric. They applauded and shouted, until suddenly the president raised his hand to speak, and the entire square fell silent instantly. The president approached the microphone, thanked all those present, his vice president, his spouse, and especially all the people of the nation, those who were gathered there, and those who were watching from their homes and workplaces. He paused briefly and began his speech.
Today, we patriots have the duty to recover our glory and make our nation great again. For years, we have been relegated in our own land, abandoned to the background. We are being invaded by the borders. Our cities are filling up with criminals who come to take refuge fleeing their governments. They come to take away our citizens' peace, our jobs, to live at the expense of our social security, and to impose their beliefs and customs on us. And we all know who is responsible, and that is why I am here, to prevent these injustices against our people, against you, from being committed, and to judge and condemn the guilty ones. As if this were not enough, our companies are being sent abroad, and the jobs that belong to you are being given to our ideological enemies so that they can then flood us with their poor-quality products. We are under attack, and they do nothing to prevent it. On the contrary, they conspire against us on all fronts, and they call it globalization and liberalism. Their liberalism attacks our values with their excesses of sexual freedom. They want each of us to be like them, homosexuals, bisexuals, transgenders. They are coming for us. They are in the movies, on television, and in schools stalking our children. That is not freedom. That is decadence. They sell us the discourse of equality and take our women out of their homes to neglect their duties to their children and their husbands, destroying the family. And if they destroy the family, they destroy the nation, because the family is the heart of the nation. Liberalism is a dangerous enemy, because freedom in the wrong hands is a weapon. Yes, a weapon against our essence, our identity, our principles, our purity. It is our duty as patriots to defend our jobs, our businesses, and our families. We will not give them the opportunity to steal our nation and our dignity. Let them know that I am here to stand up to them. They started this fight. They were the ones who separated from us. And the time has come to put an end to the division they have created. This is the defining moment when we stand against them, and I will be with you all along the way. And at the end of the battle, there will only remain us.
The audience overflowed with applause and shouts of hysteria. They repeated frantically, "Us! Us! Us!" After the speech, there was a celebratory cocktail for the guests. Mr. Thompson was overwhelmed with work, running around. He was seen approaching the guests and accompanying them one by one to the president's office. I thought my turn would never come, but at the end of the night, Mr. Thompson came up to me and whispered in my ear, "Please come with me." I followed him around the room and down several corridors, without saying a word.
The president wants to talk to you.
He told me just before opening the door to the anteroom to the office. I entered the anteroom, followed by Mr. Thompson, who immediately closed the door upon entering. There were two huge security guards standing on either side of the room. Mr. Thompson insisted that I take a seat and offered me a shot of whiskey. I accepted it politely. Mr. Thompson walked through the room and into the president's office next door. I was intimidated by all this formality and magnificence. So, I begged my alien to join me, and since I didn't know how to act or what to say in such an incredible situation, I asked him to speak in my place as well. I made a huge effort not to move my lips in front of the guards, so I used all the strength of my imagination to summon the alien until he finally showed up. He walked through the office door and stopped in front of me. The guards didn't notice his presence. He looked me straight in the eyes and asked,
Do you really want to do this?
This meant that he was going to take my place, take over my body and mind. I hesitated for a few seconds. Yes, I want to do this, I replied. I felt an intense chill. My eyes clouded for an instant. An electrifying tingle took over my body, and I felt it. He was inside of me, in my mind and in my body. It was strange to me that at no time did I lose consciousness. I just felt braver, stronger, more cunning, more out of this earth. Mr. Thompson appeared at that moment, accompanied by the president and a couple of journalists with their cameras and microphones.
Mr. President, he's Kevin Rodriguez from the...
The president immediately interrupted him.
Oh, yes. You're the one with the aliens, of course. A pleasure, son.
And he extended his hand to me. We shook hands tightly and both smiled for the cameras. The president made an almost clownish face and remained stiff in front of the journalists who took dozens of photos in fractions of seconds. When he withdrew his hand, Mr. Thompson immediately handed him an antiseptic napkin with which the president thoroughly wiped his hands before proceeding.
You've done a great job, son.
And saying this, he signaled to the journalists to leave the room.
I'm proud of you, son. With your help, we have been able to get rid of some annoying officials. Is there anything I can do for you?
He asked. I wanted to ask for a raise and maybe a government position, but the alien had taken my place and I had been left out of the game. I couldn't reveal my desires, and all I heard was the alien say,
I'd like to ask you some questions, Mr. President.
The president turned his head toward Mr. Thompson and questioned him with his eyes.
We have 10 minutes.
Mr. Thompson said.
You heard Mr. Thompson. You have 10 minutes.
I would like to begin by congratulating you on your excellent speech.
Thank you, son.
However, I see that the whole speech was aimed at dividing the nation between them and us. Is that what you really think, Mr. President?
The president looked me in the eyes, wondering if it was worth answering the question or not. At that moment, the alien must have hypnotized the president with some supernatural power, because he immediately set out to answer each question without complaining. And he answered,
The nation is already divided, son. All I've done is make public what everyone has known for a long time. Most of the American people have a lot of resentment. The politics of all these years have left them out of the debate. Every time a new politician takes the stage, all they do is talk about the rights of African Americans, immigrants, women, homosexuals, minorities, the disabled, and the gringo has been forgotten. No one bothers to claim the rights of white Americans anymore.
With all due respect, Mr. President, could it be that the Anglo-Americans already had those rights and that the others you just mentioned did not? Or that what you call the rights of the white Americans could be nothing more than old privileges?
You may see it that way, but most Americans don't see it that way. What they see is that the politicians of the left, and those of the middle, and those of the moderate right have been fighting for the rights of others, and no one mentions them in the political contest anymore. No one defends them. No one protects them. When Congress talks about diversity in the universities, that can only mean one thing: fewer seats for Anglo-Americans. When they talk about allocating Social Security funds to African Americans or immigrants, what they really mean is more taxes and less funding for white Americans. When they talk about giving free rein to sexuality, that means to taint the Christian values of our people. And when all these measures are taken without consulting the people, what they see is as if they suddenly no longer live here, as if this is no longer their nation, and that it is being taken away from them little by little.
But the nation belongs to everyone. That is precisely what it is about. That everyone is a fellow citizen and a member of the same nation, and that freedoms, opportunities, and public funds are distributed equally among everyone, and that Everyone includes minorities.
I understand you, son, but all this has been happening without the direct participation of the people. Democracy has become an exclusive privilege of politicians, and by taking away the participation of the people, they feel that they are being ignored and that their country is changing without taking them into account. It is not just what is done, but also how it's done. Democracy is about everyone's participation in political debate, not just going to vote. But established hierarchies limit the participation of the people or the inclusion of those who have been left out. And it's not just the parliament, it's the entire chain of command. Congressmen and senators are trained in the universities where the children of the masses cannot attend. State governments resemble oligarchies. There is no room for the masses. The only thing left for them is to go to vote.
And you have set out to change all that for sure, and give the people more participation in politics.
No, son. I have no intention of giving them anything at all. On the contrary, I'm going to take the reins of everything. This country needs a steady hand to guide it, and that will be me.
Do you mean that the people are only a means to achieve your goals?
They are the means, yes, but they are also the end. I only need a justification, and it will be enough for every political opponent, every critic, every citizen, every father, every mother, to be at the mercy of my absolute power. Nothing could stand in my way.
And what's stopping you?
The only obstacle I have to break down are the individual rights.
Obstacle?
Yes, individual rights are like a big wall. They enclose the most solid barriers to absolute power. The thing is that individuals are not distinguished by their race, or sex, or religion, or ideology, or wealth, or power. The only thing that defines them is their human condition, which, once established, gives them certain inalienable rights, rights that all individuals share equally. But if I can manage to dehumanize any individual under the justification of being a Marxist, or an Islamist, or a homosexual, or a pro-immigrant, then they will have lost their human condition, and with it, the rights that protect them. And that's where I'll get the breakthrough to impose my authority over everyone.
But not everyone is a Marxist or an Islamist or whatever.
It doesn't matter. Nothing prevents me from accusing any individual of being one, and thereby making my will over everyone. Besides, those who support me expect nothing more than to impose themselves too on others. They want the same thing, power and privileges.
What you are trying to do is a path of no return. Once a tyrant, there is no way out. They will give you the power to do your will in exchange for giving them the right to do theirs over others, and you will be responsible for every single crime they commit. They will demand more crimes, more injustices, more privileges, and if you walk on them, they will turn against you. They will say that you are not strong enough, or that you are not a true patriot, and they will conspire against you.
That doesn't keep me up at night. If they want a tyrant, they will have one. There is not enough sacrifice to attain absolute power. I have had everything in life: success, wealth, women, countless goods. I can afford all pleasures, and I have tasted power. The only thing left for me to achieve is absolute power, the power to go above the law, the power to be the law.
The supreme law is the Constitution. Not even you can be above the Constitution.
Listen, son. When they ask me to expel immigrants, when they ask me to prevent homosexuals and transsexuals from attending the same schools as their children, when they want me to put brakes on Muslims, when they ask me to imprison communists and leftists, it will be they, themselves, who are going to beg me to go over the Constitution. The entire judicial system will collapse, and justice will be dispensed solely by executive force. If patriots want the homeland to themselves, that means that the others don't count. But you can't go over everyone else if you don't go over the Constitution. When the myth that we are all equal before God collapses, when a patriot is superior to an immigrant, or a homosexual, or a Muslim, then not all will be equal before the law, and the whole Constitution will collapse. I will be the Constitution.
And the conspiracies, what about them?
Son, fear is the greatest engine for change. If the masses perceive that democratic institutions cannot protect them, or worse, that they are the source of their fears and their evils, then bipartisanship, free press, elections, etc., everything will be doomed. They will implore me to protect them from the monsters of democracy.
And is that good for the American nation?
It's the future. It's the next step. It's unstoppable. We are already a powerful force. Can you imagine all that strength concentrated in a single fist of steel? Remember that it was Alexander who created the Macedonian Empire, that it was Julius Caesar who expanded the borders of Rome and started a dynasty of emperors, or that it was Genghis Khan who created the largest Mongol Empire. Without a great leader, there is no great empire.
Sir, it's time to go.
Mr. Thompson interrupted, observing that the president had let himself be carried away by his passion.
Yes, of course. Thank you, son. Have a good night.
The president replied before leaving the room. Mr. Thompson was escorting the president to the door, and just before leaving the room, he turned to say,
All that has been said here stays here. Do you understand?
I understand.
The alien replied.
The Last Dream. Abel Betancourt. Chapter 9. The Awakening.
The afternoon was humid. It had been raining all day. Some interruptions with the internet service had prolonged my work. Yes, my new full-time job on the web. Little by little, I received new instructions. The conspiracy was becoming more and more insane. Everything was possible, from sex scandals between members of Congress with aliens to a plot to abduct the president. Nothing was too absurd anymore. The public's mind had been compressed into a singularity that crushed itself under the weight of its enormous gravity into an inner abyss where every fable was believable. Sometimes I felt like doubting, questioning my new beliefs, but I couldn't. It was too painful for me to accept my own stupidity. In addition, I felt that patriotic duty to protect our leader, the only one who took us into account. Many times I tried to wake up, but it felt so good to be a part of something, to finally be heard. It was the first time that someone from above paid attention to us and understood us, and it even seemed that he thought like us. I would have done anything to stay asleep there. It is true that the alien had shown me the way and opened the doors to success, but it was our leader who finally understood us. He fought for us, to preserve our lost privileges. We had been abandoned to our fate. We had been put at the back of the line. We had been relegated to compete on equal terms with women, homosexuals, immigrants, minority races. It wasn't fair. We deserved more than the others. Things became more tense as the voting approached. The mood of the nation was heating up. Everywhere they were talking about the same thing: conspiracies of all kinds, of aliens, of spies, of traitors, and of plots, to the point of exploding. It all began that afternoon in the middle of a storm. I had fallen asleep on the computer keyboard when suddenly the alien, my friend, woke me up from a strong jolt.
Wake up! You must watch the news. Run, turn on the TV.
I was still rubbing my eyes while turning on the TV. It was unbelievable what my eyes saw. A huge mob of demonstrators had launched themselves against the seat of government to prevent the president from being abducted by the aliens so they could put the opposition candidate in his place. They carried banners of all kinds that read, "Our leader forever," "They are not going to steal him," "This is our country," and so on. That night seemed to have no end. All the television channels broadcast the same news, some applauding and supporting the demonstration, others criticizing and condemning it. The demonstration spread and grew larger and larger and dispersed throughout several cities. Roads were closed and all public services. The new patriots had taken over the entire nation, and the night multiplied into days. And there we were, perplexed in front of the media, waiting for fresh news. Until little by little, the television channels, representing the opposition, stopped broadcasting and were gradually closed by force. The president accused them of attacking him unjustly, of lying to the people, of treason. Very soon, those echoes of opposition to the president disappeared. The elections were canceled indefinitely. The social institutions intended for public opinion, civil rights, and so on ceased to operate. The people, devoid of judgment and reason, had ceased to believe in the system that had protected them for centuries from the authoritarian force of the state, and had put in their place an autocrat. The people, in their desire to protect themselves from the conspiracies and plots, had lost faith and confidence in the system and ended up destroying it, as simple as towers and windmills are destroyed, shattering the very foundations of the nation, crushing the Constitution under the feet of the frenzied stampede, to establish a regime in which the new freedom fighters would end up trampling on the freedom of others to erect a leader, a master, who once put in place by force, could only be sustained by force, passing over everything that opposed him and them, so that a single truth would reign above all possible truth, that of the patriots, and I was one of them. I had been architect and engine of that rebellion. And in compensation, I deserved a piece of the pie. I was already rubbing my hands and gnashing my teeth, waiting for my reward, when the unexpected happened. My alien appeared in his ship in front of my window, opened the hatch, and shouting from above told me,
My mission is done. Now I must leave.
and like a ray of light vanished in front of my sight. The trail of light left by the ship was fulminating and blinding, and everything vanished before my eyes. My dark room lit up. The thunderous noise of the ship's engines ended up waking me up. And as if in an explosion of lucidity, I opened my eyes and woke up from my lethargy. My dream was over, and I was once again that mediocre supermarket employee, thrown in the middle of my tiny room, all unpainted and full of empty bottles. Immediately, my pulse stirred, and I felt like screaming. I called him and looked for him everywhere, but it was all in vain. He didn't come back, the night was over, and my ghost was gone. At times, I wanted to believe that my reality was my dream and vice versa, and I would squeeze my eyes and pinch my cheeks to wake up to my dream once again. But nothing worked anymore. I was haunted by the implacable reality of my miserable existence, once again reduced to a larva, without being able to have an opinion, without being able to participate, without being able to fight for a cause.
The end.